Welcome back to On the Light. I'm your host, Susan Johnson. My guest today is Nikki Costello, a longtime student and teacher of Iyengar Yoga. Nikki reflects on her first encounters with light on yoga, her studies with Mary Dunn and Gulnaz Dashti, and the profound experiences that shaped her understanding of the teachings at the Ramamani Iyengar Memorial Yoga Institute in Pune. Along the way, Nikki shares stories of Guruji and Geetaji that illuminate not only their brilliance as teachers, but also the depth of care, discipline, and transformation that lie at the heart of the guru-disciple relationship. She speaks about lineage, mentorship, oral tradition, and what it means to carry the teachings forward, not as a collection of techniques, but as a living practice that continues to evolve within each of us. This is a conversation about transmission, responsibility, and the enduring vitality of the teachings. Please enjoy my conversation with Nikki. Nikki.
Hi.
Well, thank you for meeting with me today.
You're so welcome.
It was nice to run into you at the convention that we just came from. Maybe we should just start there since that was so recent for us, that experience. Do you have any kind of big takeaways from that experience and from Abhijata's teaching?
Huh. I'm having a sigh. Yes, I do. You know, I'll let you know that the first time I was at a convention with the Iyengars was 2007. And so, nearly 20 years has passed, and that in itself creates an arc in one's own reflection and development. And so, one of the takeaways for me was really looking at that first experience of being in convention with Gita and how kind of green or like ripe like I felt, and was just kind of like wanting to take everything in, and also observing that while Gita was on the platform, there were always demonstrators, and the senior teachers in our method were scattered like throughout the hall with sections and working with Gita directly in terms of what she was seeing and what was happening. And so one of my takeaways is actually that impression, and how in the last few conventions that Abhijata has led, there's been less of that kind of, I'll call it hierarchy, or hierarchy just in the sense of dividing the room into different levels of practice or different stages, and much more of a communal feel of we're all here, we're doing this thing that we want to do together. And yes, some of us have been doing it longer, and some of us are teachers and some of us are not. That the environment held everything. And I think that that's certainly a takeaway for me, and something that has become incredibly important in maturing and growing as a teacher in this method, is that I would consider myself, right, the student of one of Guruji's students. So that's where I am, right? I wasn't a direct student of BKS Iyengar in the sense of that timing.
Yes.
But my teacher was, and my teachers are. And so there was always this feeling of, how do you connect to that direct link to receiving, right? Receiving what was given. And and then trusting like myself to kind of work with that and understand what that means for me. And I feel like what I feel really, let me kind of identify what it is. There's some relief, actually, and there's also inspiration in Abhijata's grasp of the philosophical tradition as well as the what we've received through all of the years of asana and pranayama. They've never been separate,
Mhm.
and I feel that Abhijata really holds the bigger picture,
Mhm.
not only of us in this method, but also Iyengar Yoga situated in a global movement, in a global yoga. And I think that that's really important, that we have a lot more acceptance and flexibility of where and how people have come to Iyengar Yoga, whether or not they're just trying something out and seeing if it's right for them. Like the space where all of that is welcome feels like a big growth movement.
I-
Yeah.
Very important. It's very important that we have that now. I feel it's our responsibility to carry this method forward, and that's a big responsibility.
Yeah, and then the question, Susan, is what are we carrying forward? And I think that that's something that when I say what, I mean when there is when there are sort of layers, or one would say, okay, if I'm one step removed from Guruji, but I was a student of Gita, and then, my mentor is a Pune teacher, Gulnaz Dashti, who's been there for decades. Like there is that sense of like in it as something is passed on, what are we carrying forward? And I really strongly believe that all of our own sadhana, like what each teacher, what each practitioner does to understand the method for themselves is really important. So like what we're carrying forward is, yes, it's not it's yes, there are practices, there are techniques, there are ways that we've learned how to do this and that, the importance, the pillars of Iyengar Yoga, the skill and action, the actions of how we approach the practice. And I feel that so much is being metabolized in our own sadhana in terms of, well, what am I bringing forward? What is the attitude I'm bringing forward? How am I welcoming people into the space? How am I introducing someone to teachers that they wouldn't know firsthand, but uh, who have paved a way, who have cleared a path for us to be able to step into. So I consider myself one that isn't just responsible for bringing those teachings forward, but fully bringing the spirit of the practice
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for saying that. So now let's just back up to how you came to this method. What led you to this method?
There's a certain part of the story I love to tell because when you go back in time, and for people hearing this that may have come to the method, more recently or even heard about it through, on the internet, looking something up or social media or something like that. When I found this method, I found light on yoga. Like I found light on yoga. That was what I found. I was a Ashtanga Vinyasa practitioner first.
Mm-hmm.
And the studio that I practiced at in New York City had a very, very small bookshelf, where they sold books. And at the time, there were very few yoga books that you could buy. And light on yoga was the only one I wanted. It was the one that showed all the different poses and their names and their benefits. And so I was introduced to Iyengar Yoga through light on yoga.
Wow.
And uh, had learned the primary series in Ashtanga yoga. So I started in my early 20s and had a lot of vigor and desire. And, I was motivated, right, to practice yoga and to practice it in that spirit. What some people may not know or have as an experience in their body of Ashtanga Vinyasa, the primary series, was that it was something you showed up at the studio and did on your own, right? The studio opened, the practice space was open by 6 a.m. and I would get there before I would go off to work so that I could do the practice. And so right from the early years, it was a self practice. And the way that practice was introduced was one posture at a time, one name at a time. And so I had light on yoga at that time as a reference for like what I was actually experiencing and doing. But I had to look up, like, did I hear that name properly? Like, what was the name of that pose? And so I started by using the book that way. And I share that because that was me as practitioner. Very early on, I had teachers who recognized there that I had an aptitude for teaching, and they said, "Why don't you, consider teaching?" And then a whole other responsibility set in very soon. Well, if I was going to teach this, then I must know. And still, light on yoga was like, you need to know that book inside out. You need to know the names of the poses, how to say them, how to go into them, how to go out of them. And what became interesting about teaching was that I wasn't going to teach Ashtanga yoga. Like I found myself being asked to teach basics, beginner classes. So what I quickly understood was a lot more was required to work with a beginner who might not have the same ability or capacity or access. So that process of like breaking things down right away and understanding how to do that, it came directly through that study. And then I started going to Iyengar yoga classes. I sought out Iyengar yoga classes in New York City, and the teacher that I was first introduced to was Kevin Gardner.
Okay.
In New York City. Kevin was a student of Mary Dunn. And then many years that followed after that, I had the opportunity and the exposure to senior Iyengar yoga teachers, and I would attend, weekend workshops. And I was living at the time outside of New York City for a number of years, and so I didn't have access to an Iyengar yoga teacher on a weekly basis. So again, the practice for me opened through self-practice. So I was less class oriented and more, study these things, understand how these things feel and work. And so yeah, that was the beginning. I first went to India in the year 2000. So the years I was describing were between 94 and 2000. And then I went to India for the first time, and the trip was not to go to Pune. I was going to stay just outside of Mumbai because I was offering service in an ashram there,
Oh, wow.
and which some people know about me and some people don't. And I'm not inclined to elaborate on that here.
Okay.
What I will say though, if it comes back, maybe I'll speak more about it. But what I will say is that I was encouraged at that stage to continue my practice of Iyengar yoga. And so while I was there, I said, well, I'm going to get on a train and go to Pune. And I had a couple of friends, and we all got on a train and went to Pune. And unbeknownst to me, I found my way to the Institute by rickshaw from Corrigan Park, where we were staying, and arrived at 3 in the afternoon. And those of us that know the kind of Pune daily schedule would know that that was, library time, after lunch, tea time. And so when I got to the Institute, it was completely quiet. And Pandu greeted me as I walked into the lobby. And, I was a kid. I actually have a great picture from that era. And and I was just enthralled with stepping into the Institute. And Pandu showed me the whole place, and we went up to the top floor and made our way back down to the practice space. And, I looked at all of Guruji's accolades and pictures on the walls. And then when we got downstairs, he said, Guruji's in the library, and he should be coming up any moment. So sure enough, he did. He ascended the staircase in his, white lungi in the afternoon. And I just dropped to the floor and, just pranamed to his feet. And he kind of pulled me up, and I expressed my gratitude. I said what was true. I said, I've learned from your teachers, but I've learned from you. Like, I've carried this book with me for all these years. And it was like this incredibly emotional moment. And I said, I really want to come back here. And he said, yes. And that was in 2000. And it was a process then. I didn't get to come back until 2010. And I think what if we go back to like what happened at this last convention, there's a different access now that I just want to name. Like at the time, I was living in India during that period. I didn't get back into the States until 2005, and then developed my mentoring relationship with Mary Dunn. And then Mary Dunn, 2 years later, recommended me to go to Pune. And then I was on a wait list, to get there. And then the year I was meant to go, they canceled international students because there was it was during 2008, and there was tension in Bombay with a bombing. And so they didn't have international students coming. So then 2 more years. So it's like from that meeting with Guruji, it was a 10-year process to get there. And I kind of hold that in my being now as a real deepening, not only of like the longing to have a wish fulfilled, but that the time created a discipline in practice and an appreciation for where I was really going, like where I was really, bringing myself. And so by the time I did get there, I was already an Iyengar yoga teacher, not just a student that was wanting to be there, but I had already taken 2 assessments, and I was, yeah.
So that meant then, my first time going was 2006. I wasn't a certified teacher yet, and which meant I couldn't observe in the other classes. I couldn't go to the medical classes and that type of thing. Were you able to do that then on your first visit?
Yeah, I was. And I do have this like very visceral sensation of Nikki, her first time in Pune. I was lit, I was so happy to be there. But I also was like, probably, like the over enthusiastic, sometimes the Iyengars would be like the American, like the over-enthusiastic American that like wants to be there in everything. And I do know that like, yeah, it felt like, oh, my time is now. And I want to be there from morning until night. What ended up happening was that I was asked if I would help move props around in the medical class. So I followed a senior teacher who was engaged with somebody who was there in the medical classes and was bringing props. So I observed every class. I was moving props around and watching in the medical class. I wanted to know what was going on and was quickly told many times, like, you don't need to ask questions, just observe, get the things that are asked. But it was its own learning to have that inquiry or that questioning going on, but to also just say, okay, you're an observer. And that was a really, really important understanding. And it's something that when I have mentees and speak to them about spending the years and the time standing or sitting in the back of the room observing how important that stage is. So, yeah. So I was in it, but I was also, you know, I was doing whatever I could because I had a lot of energy and enthusiasm to do.
Great.
And Geeta was teaching. So just to be clear, at that time, Guruji was in the hall during all of Geeta's classes, certainly the ones that happened during the day. And so in our practice time in the morning, Guruji was there, and he was often, doing his own practice, and or, people were near him or around. And so, I would get close. I liked to listen. So I had some of those wonderful moments where something was being imparted, and you got to see it happening. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I wish I would have been more like that when I was there. I was kind of timid and shy and felt like I should, keep my distance, but still, there's still a lot that I learned. Well, can you tell us, Nikki, about maybe some of those teachings that were imparted? Do you have anything that you remember that you want to share?
I have a memory, and I will share it. And what I will say is that there's a part of it that I wouldn't say is vague, but it was also like maybe I didn't catch it. So Guruji was working with Raya, and Raya's his back was toward, the rope wall at the far end of the hall, and his legs were outstretched. Raya's long outstretched legs in a Parshvahasta Padasana. And he was teaching, or in a sense, asking him to go toward Trikonasana. What was more kind of exquisite about the exchange was that he was using the metaphor of music. Like he wasn't teaching alignment, right? Or what to do in the pose. He was drawing upon music and harmony and this sense that, you were watching him observe something where he was calling upon ways that we could be looking and or listening like differently to how something felt. So he was playing, and I'm playing now with that, which is, we often speak about the observer, right? And I just did, like, you're observing and this is what you see. But this teaching in that moment was about a felt sense
Mhm.
of what you were hearing in the cells, or where the harmony was between the stretch of the legs, between the direction of the limbs and the direction of the trunk. So that's why I'm saying, like, that's as much as I can kind of give to that. And there was a part of me that was like, well, I wasn't Raya in the pose, but I was, again, the observer listening to how he was speaking about listening.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, that was one. There was also this beautiful moment, and I had this moment of recognition in the last convention because Abhijata was speaking about the class where she was asked to teach, and Guruji said, "Don't worry, I'm just going to tell you what to do, and you're going to say what I tell you to say." And Abhijata told that story in this last convention, and I was in that class.
Mhm.
And it was also like one of these moments. And Gita, if I'm correct, was also in that class. Like, I may be wrong, but I felt like my memory was all of them were there. Like, everyone was there, and the class was packed. And it was, at the time called the ladies' class. And there was this incredible sense of vibrancy. Like, this is a transmission. This is what this tradition is. It is passed on. This is the parampara. And I remember being there and feeling like, oh, this is how it's happening. Wow, this is how it's happening.
Mhm.
And to also be in the kind of cause and effect of, no, I asked you to say it that way, and then to be the practitioner in the room and going, oh wait, those are different.
Mhm.
Like, Abhijata gave the example of the word that she had changed and why he said that's not how I said it, and her recognizing later, or like, how important that word was, like how much goes into the word, particularly from a master,
Mhm.
right? Like, you don't change a word because the word has also arisen. So there's a very, like, there's a word for me that's incredibly special in the yogic tradition, and it's called Chaitanya. And what it means is that it is imbued. Like, the word holds everything. It is alive. And it has been enlivened through understanding, through the experience of its aliveness. So when it's said, it also carries the experience of that aliveness. And and I felt like, for me, that was one of the most exquisite experiences of that, not only that word, but the transmission.
Yeah. Wow. I just gave me the chills what you were saying. It's so true. I mean, every word is so important. It reminds me of the sutras, where even every syllable of each sutra it has so much, holds so much meaning.
Meaning, yes. In Sanskrit, yes. Also vibration. See, the meaning is the vibration, and that's kind of what I'm getting to, is that, like, the when something is Chaitanya, it's holding a vibratory truth. It's the vibration of that experience.
Mhm.
So when you look at the sutras, they're pithy and they're condensed. That's part of the brilliance of them, because they're memorizable. Like, the point of them is that you can remember them in that condensed state.
Mhm.
Then what happens afterwards is there's commentary, right?
Mhm.
Like, there's the pithiness of the sutra, but then there's a commentary that says, and this word means, and this word means, and this word means. The actual vibration of the Sanskrit in that holds the experience.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's another way of considering. like sutra.
Yes. Yes.
That you can actually enliven the sutra through your recitation of it so that its meaning is also happening on a cellular level.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What else? How about things from Gita? What do you remember from her classes?
Okay. Gita is Gita for me is the most direct piercing of the heart.
Mm.
Uh, in that first trip, um, if I'm going to be honest and transparent about what transpired, as I shared, I was assisting in this medical class, and on your first trip to Pune, um, and I don't know if it was like only in that year, but they had decided that if it was your first trip, you were going to do a different pranayama class than Gita's pranayama class.
Mhm.
And there seemed to be a lot of stir. I don't know because it was my first trip, but there seemed to be a little bit of stir and confusion around that. So the first week I was there, I was upstairs doing a beginner pranayama class, and there were just a couple of us. There weren't many of us up there.
Mhm.
And the next week, when it came time for the pranayama class, I had been in the medical class moving around props, and I ran upstairs, and there was no one in the room.
Mm.
And I thought, did I miss something? Like, did something happen? Because I wasn't on the staircase waiting to come in to Gita's class where people are talking and organizing and gathering. So I didn't ask, but I went up, no one there. Okay, I came back down. So long story short, I found myself sitting in Gita's pranayama class, which I understood later was not where I was supposed to be. The point of telling that story is that that night and the next day, I started to feel unwell.
Oh.
And it was a combination of things. Later I understood. Like later it was diagnosed. This was a virus and it was in the brain, it was in the inner ear. There was a whole thing that happened.
Mm.
But when I shared with Gita that I had not been well that night, and then the next day when I came back to class, I was a little bit, I just wasn't 100%.
Mhm.
It wasn't my belly, and I couldn't tell, but I attended the class.
Mhm.
And then at the end of that class, I couldn't move. And this story came up in the convention because that's how Abhijata and I started to work together because Gita had her do something with me after that class because the room was spinning and I
Mhm.
had a vertigo response. Anyhow, what transpired after that was that it was because I had, like, that the pranayama had disturbed something in my inner ear
Mhm.
and brain. And then it was a big deal because I was in the wrong place. I should
Oh,
not have been there.
I see. Mm.
So I'm laughing now.
Mhm.
What happened over the next few weeks is that I was just directed to medical class. Like I could not go back. This is my
Mhm.
first trip to Pune, mind you. You recall that part of the story. It took me 10 years to get there. Now this is week 2, and I spend the rest of my time in the medical classes. And in retrospect, and really even shortly after that, I said I wouldn't have traded that for anything in the world. Because it was in that experience that I understood Iyengar Yoga.
Mhm.
I don't feel like I understood the depth of this method until I had to be in the healing in the method.
Mhm.
And also, my relationship with Gita came through in that experience. Like it was humbling. It was, you know, some people said to me, I don't know how you're managing this because it was heartbreaking and humiliating. There was a lot of strong words.
Uh-huh.
And Guruji was in the room and Gita, and it was again, I just shared the story of all of, when everybody's in the room, everybody was in the room for medical. And I was the girl, I was the one who, brought this thing on herself. And that was a really like rough thing to accept.
Yeah.
And I felt inside my being like I was lacking courage, like all the enthusiasm and courage I had come with. I was like on the other side of it, which was, well, what happens when you have none of that? And and I had internalized like, had I done something wrong?
Uh-huh.
So it was a very tricky moment. And I'm sharing it because I think it takes a lot for us to recognize the potency
Mm-hmm.
of yogic traditions, of the guru disciple relationship, because there are things that transpired in that exchange that from the outside could have been interpreted as really intense or harsh or fierce or I experienced firsthand that Gita was angry with me. At the same time, the level of care and compassion was so profound that like it reached inside and opened up a whole other way of recognizing what this yoga is.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to hold it like that. And so in that exchange, when she said to me at the end of that time, uh, why aren't you willing to learn step by step?
Mm-hmm.
It was like she took me back to the beginning of something
Mm-hmm.
and said, now take this, all that you can do, and find out where the gaps were. Like, what's missing? Or what I would say when I say gaps, I shared with you that I came from Ashtanga Vinyasa. So I had opened up access in my body and I had a young body. So I could do a lot, but I didn't necessarily know why I could do it or what was not doing and what was overdoing and what was underdoing. And so in the years that followed, and really the years that followed, where it took time to heal, because it was a virus. And the truth is, a virus can be unlocked. And that's what I also understood. It's very true that even though it was a virus, it could have been literally opened up
Right.
through the intensity of pranayama, that something kind of like broke loose. And that felt very true
Yeah.
for me. And I also accepted that better it came out and I'm able to heal from it now. And all of that set something in motion.
Ah.
And then step by step, as it was designed by Guruji, different levels of certification came from that step-by-step process. So then I had completely allowed myself to align with that gradual progression.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah.
Wow. It really sounds like it was quite a blessing that all of that happened.
For me, yes.
Yeah.
For me, yes. And I want to say that I share that story openly
Mhm.
and also I will say cautiously because I feel we're in a culture now that doesn't want to accept those exchanges.
Hmm.
there's so much more that's happening now. And again, it's something that I think Abhijata is holding in this yoga, which is that we all have to take responsibility. We have agency. We have to, not defer things to our teachers, not go to our teachers, asking our teachers to heal us or fix something. And I had this direct experience of being in this healing moment and it having every bit of nuance of, you know, what it is to be a true student.
Ah,
Yeah.
wow. Hmm. Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. I think it's important.
Maybe I'll say on a final note,
Mhm.
it's not so much that it's the teacher, it's the teachings. Meaning, we may find ourselves in situations with our students, if we're teaching, where that fierceness or that clarity of direction or that intensity comes through because we're keepers of the lineage, right? And so it's the teachings. It's not, it doesn't have to be the personality. And so we don't have to take it personally. And the
Mhm.
teacher doesn't have to be overpowering the student. And it's the teaching
Yeah.
that comes through.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. Thank you. Um, Maybe shifting a little these are really powerful lessons that were imparted onto you. How about some of the experiences that you may have had outside of the practice hall with any of the Iyengars? Did you have
mm,
opportunity to spend time in some of the gatherings that took place there?
I did in the years that I was there. Many times I was there for the Institute Celebration Day in January.
Mhm.
Um, I also had a few times I was there in March, which is not a usually International Student Month. It wasn't when for years, but because I was staying in India longer periods of time, I went once in March, and that was really extraordinary also because I was included, and Gita was doing teacher training with the Pune teachers. And that's in the institute.
Mhm.
However, what I what I want to share is just that the Iyengars made it clear, and our senior teachers made it clear that when we would go to Pune, we were only there for a month in
Mhm.
in a whole year or in a whole cycle of classes. So March was like the end of the annual cycle, right? So classes start in June, and this was March, and the last month is April.
Mhm.
So what you would see or experience in that last month in March would be very different than how they started in June, and very different than when the hall was full in December and January. And this is what I want to touch upon. What I want to touch upon is the intimacy of
Mhm.
exchange. And so when I was there for that month, I saw the cultural
Mhm.
exchange
Mhm.
where something isn't necessarily framed or shaped by the vast differences in the cultures that were represented in the room. It was the intimate Pune, you know, students.
Mhm.
And and again, much of the teaching was in Marathi. So I was like also listening and watching, and it wasn't even, wasn't that I could understand all the words of the language, but I was watching and kind of inferring. And what I felt was this familial, right? This familial gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And sitting down with Gita or, asking questions. And that just wasn't something that when you were in the hall and there were hundreds and we were international, it's like that dialogue wasn't present in the same way. So this is what I would want to touch upon that I informally witnessed a few times were these moments where, like in the Institute Day, where there was the Iyengars always held like a certain formality in what what it is that's happening there. Yoga is being taught there, and there is a formality. And in the moments of informality, whether it was sitting outside on a bench or watching students pass, one day I walked into the institute and it was early morning, and Guruji had come out onto his balcony, and it was like I just watched him kind of, you know, it was like he did this, and all of his eyebrow hairs stood up after that, and he just kind of looked down and acknowledged that I had seen it or walked toward, but it was that living presence, you know. They've shared their home.
Yeah.
They've shared their home with us for decades,
Decade.
decades and decades, which is also so important for us to see because I think that many of us go in and out of yoga spaces or studios, and we get to be a certain way when we're in that space, and then we have to be in another role when we're, home, or we don't have friends who practice yoga, so we don't even talk about that when we're with those friends. And there's a fluidity in Pune where this is the life. It isn't, they're not, it's not a compartmentalized life. It is the life. So coming out onto the balcony, and I would have imagined after a pranayama practice, I mean, that's what it looked like. Maybe not, maybe it was just sleep, but it was like that was the first moment of the day of seeing Guruji. And later I would see him in the hall, right?
Yeah.
But it was all very fluid. And
Mm.
and I think that that's something that is also being conveyed right now by Abhijata in her teaching and at the convention. Is like there was an ease in the delivery, the engagement, the conversation, the questions and answers, the way in which we could all be together, that if someone has fear to approach or their own insecurity, that's theirs to look at.
Yeah.
That's not what's being given, right? So and I think that that's really important. It's like, of course, if we admire someone, if we respect someone, if we hold someone's knowledge to be great, it's like we can approach with the humility that we approach with, and it's inviting engagement. And I think
Mm.
that that's, what they do.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. All of this, the whole point of this podcast is so that these stories, these direct stories and experiences that teachers like you have had directly with BKS Iyengar and Geetaji can be carried forward. It's kind of a gathering of oral history. And so I'm wondering, like, if you were to be able to speak directly to younger students, possibly younger teachers coming up, what do you want them to remember or, to hold close to them when they think about this, what they're embarking on, this um, sharing of our method?
Hmm. I had this wonderful exchange yesterday, so I'm going to speak to that.
Okay.
There's a student that's been in class with me for 10 years,
Mhm.
and they've arrived at a point now where they are going to go up for assessment.
Okay.
And they said to me yesterday, I don't know what's the matter with me. I really could have done this year, and I held myself back.
Hmm.
And so next year that's it.
Hmm.
And I said, good. And this person said, now that I've had more exposure to other Iyengar teachers, and also they've moved from New York to another region, and and have taken classes in different places of Iyengar yoga. Their comment was, I really have been exposed to like the best of this
Hmm.
because you share your experience so clearly. And as I said, my mentor is Gulnaz, and it was from that experience, my first experience in Pune in 2010, that I started working directly with Gulnaz. Mary Dunn had passed away, and so there were a number of years where many of us in New York, you can't replace a mentor, like it's irreplaceable. So there was this period between her passing and me going to Pune where we continued to practice together in the community, and it was a grieving process, and it was also a beautiful time to recognize what had been given,
Hmm.
right? So where did Mary live in me? Where
Yeah.
did the way that she spoke or the way that she taught, or like where did she live in me? And how in my practice was she present? And then even more so when I would hear myself say something, I was like, that was pure Mary, like Mary just spoke through that. Or observing Mary's classes when I would watch something and be like, oh, this is what she was getting at. So there were these years in between where there was time to just feel, grieve and feel, and 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 to be with that. And so when I went to Pune, and I'm coming back to that experience that I had my first time, Gulnaz was someone that Geeta had asked to work with me in the medical class. So we developed a rapport because I also had this direct experience of being with someone who was like the same age, and we have similar ways of moving and humor, and so there's this beautiful bond. And also I was like, there's not a better translator here for
Yeah.
Geeta. Like, I just felt like she was such an exquisite translator. There was these beautiful times where we would have a class on Saturday with Geeta, and then we would get together with Gulnaz on a Sunday, and we could go over what had happened on Saturday, and Gulnaz would have a way to express or say something
Hmm.
that helped us all to understand. So then we would re-practice, like, oh, this is what she was getting at. Okay, I'm saying all of this because, again, parampara.
Hmm.
Again, what I'm saying is, if we're reaching a younger generation, we're reaching them with like literally standing on the shoulders of giants, right? So if we're humble and we name, like, and this is why I think in this system, this it's your teacher, but it's also, there's a mentoring aspect that's so important in our system, because
Mhm.
I'm saying to this student who said yesterday, like, wow, I got the best. This student had also come with me to Pune one year and studied. They weren't able to be in the institute, so they took classes with Gulnaz. And only now, like almost a decade later, it was this recognition just yesterday, like all the seeds are there. Like I really got the
Mhm.
seeds.
Yeah.
And so that's so important, because we think we might think, oh, we're talking about now like icons. It's sort of like you're
Yeah.
talking about people that are removed and you haven't physically been with them. It's like hearing stories of your ancestors, right? You hear the stories, you see the heirlooms, you touch something. But it is the storytelling. It is the shared experience that says, I want to bring forth right now the way that this happened. Now, what's also interesting, which is, hey, geography, is it's going to be my interpretation, right? It's going to be my lens. It's going to
Right.
be Nikki's lens.
Right.
Okay. But I'm saying, but it's Nikki's lens who's also engaged, who's also a sadhaka, who's also studying. So it is my lens, and it matters to me that it can be received, so that a student says, ah, the seeds are there. They have been planted. Then it is still up to the practitioner to cultivate that.
Yeah. That's really powerful. Like, I don't think I've ever cried in an interview before, but wow, that was very moving. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's, yeah, you really touched on something beautiful. Um,
We have access to
yeah,
these teachings. When you pick up the Bhagavad Gita, that's it's a text. It's old. It's
yeah.
old. It's been around,
Right.
right? There's many translations, there's many interpretations.
Mhm.
Yet you can read the text. You can read Patanjali's Yoga Shastra. You can read the Rig Veda. You can read the Upanishad. You can read these, and it's not different. You open yourself to the seeds of wisdom there, and then you cultivate them, right?
Mhm.
So we don't have to feel like, oh, I missed something. Krishna didn't drive my chariot, like, oh, I want Krishna. You know what? Krishna is still accessible.
Yeah.
And I think that we're living in a time where we say, oh, something is dead or it's gone. It's like, no, we need to do far more to understand ancestral wisdom, the indigeneity of the yogic teachings. When you go to the land, when you step inside the institute at Pune, you are stepping there with every ounce, like literally every person that's walked through there, every person that's sweat there, everything that has been said there, it vibrates with that.
Mm.
That's why I'm coming back to it. It's like it's a peat, meaning
Mhm.
it's a place where Shakti is
Yeah.
contained. So this next generation, they have access to that.
Yeah.
They have access to these texts.
Mhm.
I was speaking today to a group today, the last few days, but I have the Ashtadala Yogamala, right? The 8 volumes. And I said, what's so incredible about these books is that you have you have the publications of a text like Light on Yoga, Gem for Women, Light on Pranayama. You have that. They're published, they're well composed, they have their outline, what the publisher wanted, all of that. Guruji talks about that, like creating that text. Ashtadala Yoga Mala is like all of the gems that happened in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what you actually have there then is the living history, the oral history, the case studies, the cause and effect. And you can take just one chapter of one of those things and sit with it. Wow, this is alive today. Like this is right. I see this also. So I feel that it is our responsibility to pass it on. It is equally the fire of yoga inside every person that is, cultivating what they've received.
Yes. This has really been wonderful. Is there anything else you want to say before we close out?
Yes, there is. I think there are so many ways in this moment in time where we can be agitated, triggered, where we can recognize that something doesn't feel right. And there's a lot of attention that goes into how we're doing something. What's happening? Like, it's a privilege for me to teach. So in the space, in the room, whether it's virtual, whether it's in a studio, that awareness that we have no idea what people are walking into the space with.
Yes.
We don't know the burden they're carrying. We don't know the trauma they're carrying. We don't know why they're there on that day and what, like, the courage that they had to have to just show up. Like, we just don't know. There's so much we don't know. And that as a teacher, starting from that place of welcoming someone into the space and acknowledging what we don't know is as important to starting to talk about what we know. Because we want to move this yoga forward from a place of non-harming in all of the ways. We want to move the yoga forward from a place of truth. So I'm saying ahimsa, satya. We want to move the yoga forward with saucha, with cleanliness, with a purity to the essence. And I'm not saying a purity that is, trying to wipe something clean so that it's only, available to a certain type. I'm saying saucha as the way that we both take care of our cleanliness in our own inner life, in our body, but also the cleanliness of sharing the teachings without encumbering them. So I think that when we look at the ethics that we're responsible for in the room, there's always going to be something, sometime, some moment, some group that's, that can point a finger and say, you're doing it like this, you're doing it like that. This is what Iyengar Yoga has done. This is what it hasn't done. This is, there's gonna be all of that. it is, that's the human condition. It's like, can we fight? Like, what do we want to fight about? It's like, but that's the thing, like, that's not, the yoga is what can we unite about?
Yeah.
What can we recognize is shared in our stepping into a space where we're looking at ourselves and we want to bring about healing, we want to bring about harmony, we want to impact, our lives and the lives of those around us. So,
Mhm.
welcome
Mhm.
everyone with
Yes,
respect.
I full-heartedly agree with that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Thank you for everything, Nikki.
Thank
All
you.
right. Okay.
Namaste.
Thank you for joining me for this conversation with Nikki Costello. I was especially moved when Nikki spoke about the seeds that are planted through our teachers and mentors. The teachings may be offered through books, classes, stories, and personal experience, but ultimately, it is up to each of us to nurture those seeds through our own sadhana. In that way, the lineage remains alive. My hope is that conversations like this help preserve not only the history of Iyengar Yoga, but also the spirit, wisdom, and humanity that have been passed from teacher to student across generations. If you enjoy On the Light, please consider liking, sharing, or subscribing. And if you're able, a small monthly donation helps support the continued production of this podcast. Until next time, thank you for listening. Namaskar.